Hi there, this is Pat, and I want to run through Itnet 159 and hopefully get you up and going in the class so you can start learning about PowerShell. So as we've mentioned in previous postings in the Google Plus community, PowerShell is going to be 50% cloud and 50 or PowerShell. Itnet 159 will be 50% cloud and 50% PowerShell. I'm responsible for the PowerShell half of the course, so that's what I'm going to focus on in this screencast. Regarding the book, I have the link posted here. It was also posted in our community. Basically, it's about 20 bucks. I love the book because the author's intended audience for the book is basically like network administrators that want to learn how to use PowerShell to manage their environments. So it's not real academic. It's not written for software engineers. It's written for network administrators that want to learn how to use PowerShell to manage your environment. So I thought that would be the perfect book to use for this course. It's not a textbook, but what I do like is at the end of each chapter of the book, there are like activities that you can do, and essentially I've assigned those activities out to you through, you'll see in a little bit, that you'll be working on. We're going to cover about half the book this semester. My hope is after we run through the book this semester, on your own you'll just finish the rest of it up this summer. So, anyways, it's up to you, but it's important material, and I think you'll enjoy learning it. I'm going to try to keep this short. I'm not going to lecture on the content from chapters 1 and 2. I'm just talking about the class. Chapters 1 and 2 aren't that deep, so my thought is that you can read that and get that material on your own. But what I will say is this. PowerShell is definitely a product that's here to stay. Microsoft created PowerShell to allow people to automate procedures, in the Microsoft environment, so they can create user accounts, they can create network shares, they can automate the deployment of software. It goes on and on and on and on. They did that because when you create a script to do something, it's a lot more repeatable. It's a lot more easier to document as opposed to go to Active Directory, users and computers, right click here, add a user. It's a lot easier to do things via script. And there's a lot of examples out there of how companies have saved money. But there's one that jumps to mind. I had a guest speaker come to one of our classes about a year or two ago, and he was a consultant for Barnes & Noble, and basically the gist of his talk was, prior to him, whenever Barnes & Noble opened up a new store, they would spend a couple days setting up their servers to support that environment. So it was a domain controller, there was a member server, software that would be installed, etc., etc., etc. The process was fairly complicated because each store, obviously wasn't these. You couldn't just clone the servers. There were certain things that made the servers unique. I'm sure, store location, store name, or whatever it is. But anyways, this gentleman spent about 6 months, but he created a script or a series of scripts that could be used to deploy these servers. So he took a 2 or 3 day process and he boiled it down to a couple hours. Claims he saved Barnes & Noble's millions of dollars over the course of this script being used. So it's definitely out there. In class, I had a student not too long ago that was halfway through the class, and he worked for a small company, and something like halfway through the semester, all of their employees, he needed to update something, I think update all their email addresses in Active Directory. So I don't know if they were changing either email addresses or the company got bought and the name was changing slightly. I can't remember the specifics. But basically, as opposed to going through each user and right-clicking, copy-paste, right-clicking a user and changing his email address in Active Directory, he just wrote a PowerShell script to do that. And he actually didn't write it. I mean, a lot of what I'm going to teach you this semester is you're not going to create anything from scratch. Your goal is basically to take something that someone else has done, modify it slightly, and then use it to fit your needs. So that's what he did, and he had found a script, made some slight modifications to it, but it allowed him to load all of his users into a spreadsheet, run a PowerShell script that read the user names in, matched those up with his Active Directory users, and then updated the email addresses. So it's pretty cool. I like it so much I turned it into an assignment. So that's one of your assignments you'll be working on this semester. So that's PowerShell, why you should learn it. Also, PowerShell 6 or 6.1 is out now, and it's not just for Microsoft products anymore. This I think it's called like PowerShell Core or something like that. But essentially, it works on Windows-based machines, it works on Macs, and it works on Linux and some versions of Linux. So PowerShell is spanning various operating systems as well. So I think it's definitely worth you spending the time to learn it. Good. So with that said, let's talk about what the expectations are and And the best way to do that is just to jump into the syllabus. And that's not it. And that's not it. Let's see here. Here we go. I'll run through this really quick. This is my second time recording it, so I'm a bit nervous that I'm going to repeat myself if I've said something already, but you've got my contact information. You have my office hours here. So you can see Tuesdays and Thursdays. I am available West Campus on Tuesdays from 9:30 to 1, Thursdays 11 to 1 at the Milwaukee campus. We also have a tutor available in our Academic Support Center who's around Wednesday, Thursdays, and Fridays. So there's a lot of availability. I really think probably the most, I'm trying to think why a student would want to come initially, and that would be potentially to get the virtual machines to do the PowerShell labs. But we are using the same VMs that we used last fall for server 1 and 2. So if you have those, you're good to go. If not, you could stop by to copy our VMs or download them. More information on that in a bit. So I have multiple copies of the syllabus open. All right. So those are my office hours. We talked about the tutor available. We've talked about the book already. So if I look at this class calendar here, what is a student? Here's a takeaway. Week 1, January 28th through February 4th, you should read chapters 1 and 2 out of your books. You should complete the PowerShell Share Lab, which is posted under assignments by February 4th. And I've got some additional screencasts to watch that will complement what you are learning in your in chapters 1 and 2 out of your book. So I want to run through all this right now with you. As far as the videos below here go, the author of your book just created a bunch of 2 and 3 minute videos, and I added links to his videos so that way as you're reading the book, you can spend 8 minutes, 6 minutes, and just watch the videos that correspond to your reading. I think that'd be super helpful. And this is just another link, another video I found online, and I loved it. Just 30 common tasks you can perform using the GUI, that you can do faster in PowerShell. So that's kind of what the PowerShell is all about, right? Getting the job done quicker. I would much rather spend time on the job learning about new technologies as opposed to resetting people's passwords. Or, if I work for Halloween Express, I had a student that worked there every fall. They quadruple their workforce. Anything you can do in PowerShell to create user accounts or disable them is great, as opposed to right-clicking and clicking around to do the same thing. So, with that said, let's do the PowerShell Lab assignment first, and then that'll kind of walk through your first week or two of activities. So if I jump back to Blackboard here, and if I jump into assignments, this is the PowerShell Lab. This is basically the same thing that you did for your labs for server 1 and 2. You're going to open this Google document here. You're going to make a copy of it and share it, which I've already done. But so let me just see here. So obviously you just file, make a copy. You can make your own copy of it, and then once you've done it, take your copy, change the name of it. Put your name in the title, so that way I know that way I know whose lab it is when I look at it quickly. Pretty much everything in highlighted you're going to have to fill out. The first part of this is just getting the virtual machines. So I've got a link here on how you can get them, but basically you can download them, which a lot of you did last semester, or you can stop by an MATC campus and just copy them. Even if you're on campus for another class, if it's an IT class, the classroom will have the VMs in it. If not, our internet is really fast at MATC, so you can always just download them while you're on campus. So we can open this document for 10 seconds here. Stop by labs, stop by an academic support center, or download the virtual machines. The academic support centers, we have one on each campus. More information about that in this document here, so it shouldn't be too hard to get a copy of our virtual machines. Good. So now the assumption is under chapter 1 you would have read chapter 1 in your book, and now you're going to do the labs associated with chapter 1. Now honestly, you know how books go. The first couple chapters of most books are kind of boring. There's not a ton of content there. So I just created some activities on my own the first activity I did, I just wanted to make you aware of this, is how you go about giving a virtual machine internet access. So let me jump to, I've remoted into my desktop system at school. I don't know if I mentioned that, but today's a snow day. So I am sitting at home recording this. Oh, it's getting confused. I'm remoted into my machine at school. I've already fired up the VM. All right, so how do I give this virtual machine internet access? Because by default, if I look at the settings here, I know and I apologize, the resolution is not fantastic. Truth be told, I have my readers on right now to see the screen myself. So, but if we look at the network adapter, I have one network adapter. It's set for host only. So, one way is you can try changing this one network adapter to NAT, but then you have to change the IP address of this machine and the client machines. It gets kind of ugly. The easiest way to give this machine, get this machine access to the internet, just add a second network adapter. Add a network adapter. Second network adapter is configured to NAT, and I'm done. Well, that was easy, right? Okay. It might take a second for this network adapter to get an IP address, but you also might want to disable this enhanced security configuration, otherwise you're going to be dealing with a lot of warning messages and stuff all along. But I have a link to that in the lab as well. Right here. Oops. You can read that and disable the IESC on your server as well. I mean, obviously in a production environment you wouldn't want to disable any kind of security things like this, but in a lab environment I think that's fine. Okay. So where were we? Yeah. This is going to get old real quick, right? Alright, anyways, you can see now that this machine has internet access. I'm getting tired of clicking this. Alright, done. Good. So that's how you give a virtual machine internet access. Add a second NIC to it. Other thing that you could do is you could just simply, since we have VMware tools installed, there's no reason you just can't drag and drop files from your host computer onto your virtual machine. So most of the time you wouldn't even have to give your VM internet access. You could just copy the files to your host computer, then drag them on over. So anyways, let's jump back to the lab. And I was just kind of grabbing for straws or whatever. I was trying to come up with things for you to do for chapter 1. The book talks about different versions of PowerShell. What strikes me as interesting about that is that PowerShell first came out around Windows 7, and now we're on like version 6 of PowerShell. So it just keeps going, it keeps growing, it keeps evolving to keep up with the Microsoft product line. So it's not a stagnant product. And there's various ways of figuring out what version of PowerShell you have. Nowadays, if you're running in an environment that's like Server 2012 R2 or Server 2016 in Windows 10, this is not that big of a deal. You'll be running PowerShell version like 5.1. If you're trying to do something that's more platform OS independent, you're going to jump up to PowerShell 6 or 6.1. So, but the interesting part is when you go to the higher versions of PowerShell, version 6 of PowerShell, you do lose some functionality because, again, that product is supposed to work across multiple operating systems. So there's some things that just can't be done on Windows and Linux and Macs. So they've kind of limited the command set a bit. But anyways, PowerShell version 5.1 is what most of you will be using on the job. So I think I just have you initially just figuring out what version you're running on your VMs. I can do that on one of them. Let's just start a PowerShell here. I'm going kind of quick. Let's see here. The first thing is, this is interesting. When I fire up PowerShell, I've got four choices to make: PowerShell, PowerShell x86, PowerShell ISE, and PowerShell ISE x86. Here it is, my favorite, and the thing I recommend using is the PowerShell ISE. Alright, this one here is just like the original version of PowerShell. It's just a command prompt. Well, it looks like a command prompt. It's PowerShell. I really like the ISE though, Integrated Scripting Environment. Also, the x86 stands for 32-bit. We want to use all 64-bit. So do not run the x86 version of this. I kind of wonder why Microsoft has this around, and sometimes I feel like, you know, Microsoft basically has to create a product that's good for the whole world, and I'm sure there's some environments that need to use the 32-bit version of PowerShell for whatever reason. So Microsoft makes it available. Also, if you noticed, if you're running it on a client machine like a Windows 10 machine or something, you might need to right-click on it and run it as an administrator. So that's just something to be aware of. All right. So these are both PowerShell. I can make this a little bigger here. All right. So I think the command that we can use is get host. And if I go up a little bit, all right, so I ran this get host commandlet. Most PowerShell commandlets, you'll notice they're always like kind of two parts. There's a verb and there's a noun. Get host, clear disk, erase disk, get user, stuff like that. Anyways, this returned an object. The object got a whole bunch of properties associated with it, and one of the properties was the version property, and it shows us that we are currently at version 5.1. So this is the screenshot that I would want to take. And I would want to add that to right here. Add a screenshot of the PowerShell version for Server 2016-1. Do the same thing on 2016-2 and Windows 10. I do have a question on here. Maybe we can use get host. I also said you could use get host select object. And I may have to fix this real quick. We'll see. Hold it. Yeah. Let me fix this. There we go. We'll talk about that in a second. All right, here we go. Try this again here. Sometimes copying and pasting, I may need to type this in, which sounds kind of painful. Alright. Get host. Select object. And version. So in the ISE you can put a whole bunch of commands in. It goes on and on and on. And what you can do is you can either highlight the commands that you want to run and then just select this here, run selection, or you can just run everything. So I'm going to just run line 1. You could also just leave the cursor on line 1 and run selection works also. So now if you notice when I run it, get host runs, and there's more on this later. I'm just talking right now. So this is just kind of exposing you to PowerShell. That returns that object that we talked about with all those properties. You know, all of these properties here. And one of the most powerful things about PowerShell is you can take the output from one commandlet and pipe that or send that to the next commandlet. So we took that object with all those properties above and we sent that to the select object commandlet, and what select object does is it says, yeah, you have an object coming in with a whole bunch of properties, but I'm only going to show you one, the version property, and that's what we have. Now you could put a couple in there if you want to. You could actually, we could put a comma in there. All right, get 2 of them. Version and name, etc. But That's what the select object does. Just kind of selects parts of an object. Alright, moving on. We can determine the version, the .NET version that's running. Basically, Chapter 1 and 2 talks about when you want to upgrade PowerShell, you install this Windows Management Framework, WMF, which includes a later version of PowerShell, but that many times requires you to update .NET on your machine. And essentially, this .NET is just a collection of reusable code that a bunch of programmers created for Microsoft. So anyways, you may need to determine what version of .NET you're running. I have a link on that. I actually gave you and I can't type this in, but you can copy and paste this. I'm having an issue because I am running on a Mac, and then I am remote desktop into my Windows machine, and I can't copy and paste for whatever reason. I was kind of hoping, actually I'm going to try one more thing here. We're not in a rush, right? Let me just try this right click stuff. Copy. It'd be nice if it worked this way. Alright. Well, that kind of stinks. But anyways, if you run this command here, the whole command, that, Galpat, run the whole command, that actually, what that'll do is that returns a registry value out of your server, and that will indicate what version of .NET you're running. Alright? And then just for kicks, if you want to try it, go for it. If not, don't worry about it. If you'd like to review the following and update Server 2016 to .NET version 4.47, read this, download it, and see if you can get it to go. I'm not gonna lose sleep if you can't do it. I'm gonna have you watch a screencast here on some great things that you can do in PowerShell to replace doing them from the GUI. So watch it and just give me 5 screenshots of your 5 favorite commands from the video. Good. Chapter 2 doesn't have much in it, so I kind of added my own thing. I mentioned a lot of the class is just reusing other people's stuff and learning how to modify it. So here's a script that came out of this article here. I want you to just try copying and pasting it into one of your VMs and running it. Essentially what it should do, the scenario is this. You're working for an employer and company policy has, after 10 minutes of use, your machine locks your machine, for whatever reason, locks it goes in some kind of lock mode, and you need to run a piece of software that your machine should not lock while it's running. So there's a scenario. This guy wrote a quick script that says, hey, for 10 minutes, what we're going to do is I'm going to open up a copy of Notepad, and every minute, oh my goodness, every 60 seconds, I'm going to add an exclamation point in that Notepad document. So what's it doing? It's simulating keystrokes. So that way your machine is not going to lock. Not the most exciting thing in the world, but the idea here was, I was just looking for something. I guess I was kind of grabbing at straws. But I was looking for something to show you early on in the semester what one person did with PowerShell. So they found a way of having their machine not lock. Obviously, there's better ways of doing it, but I'm having you just spend time using PowerShell. And there'll be more on all this stuff throughout the semester. So if this makes no sense, don't worry about it. It's not supposed to, but just say, oh, that's kind of cool. Run it and see what happens. It puts an exclamation point in every 60 seconds. If you want to speed things along a bit, you can make it like every 0.1 seconds. So, something to think about. And there you go. Add a screenshot. So, again, to reiterate, I really like using the ISC. I like the fact that you can type a bunch of commands in, and then when it's all said and done, you can just highlight them and run them all at one time. Right? I have some errors in there, right? But that's it. So that gets us through the syllabus a bit. I've talked through chapters 1 and 2. What you'll be working on the first couple weeks of the class. I didn't mention, however, that once you've created your own copy of the PowerShell lab, you need to get it to me somehow so that I can grade it, right? So you have to share it. You can share it with me. Got it. You go back to Blackboard. Alright, so rename the document, add your name to the first page, add screenshots, share it with Fader P, and then submit a link to your lab document via this Google form. So click on it. I have to fix this, darn it. Well, by the time you get to this, it'll be fixed. So fill it out. Link to your lab. There it is. Itnet 159. Submit. Done. So by doing this, I have a copy of your lab so that I can grade it throughout the semester. Let's go back to the syllabus for a bit. I got to make a note to update my form. Okay. Let's see here. So I've just done this activity, PowerShell lab, due February 4th, and you should have the rest of the labs done for chapters 1 and 2 by February 11th. So there's not a ton to do the first 2 weeks as far as PowerShell goes. On February 11th, you'll start working on chapters 3 and 4, a bunch of videos, a bunch more resources, and all the labs for those activities are due on February 25th. So basically, I'm going to be grading your progress every 2 weeks. I'd like you to stay on track and not fall behind in this. I've just found that PowerShell of all content, if you put it off, this is not one of those classes that you can sit down and read like 4 chapters in an afternoon and expect to get it. It's kind of like slow and steady wins the race. Just a little bit every week, and the content will make sense. Okay. So let's see here. I did assign, and I'll have more on this later, but essentially I'm going to assign students a bunch of activities to do. You're going to do the activity and post your solution to it in our discussion board so that other people can see what your problem was and how you solved it. You can comment on that as well. More on that later. The email address assignment. This is due. Let's go back to. Well, you can see there's an email address assignment you're going to have to do, and a bulk user assignment you're going to have to do as well, and a final exam. So you've got the labs. We're basically covering out of the book chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I guess I can't count. 9 and 10 somewhere. Huh, yeah, 9 and 10, there we are. Sorry, having a senior moment here. 11, 12, 13. There's actually nothing in chapter 12, so I just kind of skipped it, chapters 11, 13. So you're doing the first 13 chapters out of your book. You're doing a couple additional assignments here, the bulk user assignment, the email address assignment, and the student demo. And that will determine your final grade. If we go to how grades are determined, the labs, based on that lab document that you made a copy of, that makes up 30% of your grade. The final is 10%. The student demo piece is 5%. And then the PowerShell lab, the email address, the PS shares, that's just basically sharing your lab. The email address assignment and the bulk user assignments make up 10% of your grade. So there you go. It's a fair amount of work, I think, this semester. The rest of this content is stuff we've talked about in previous classes. Basically, I will do my best to treat you well and answer your questions in a timely fashion. As far as on your end, you need to stay on track, keep up with your work. Students that kind of fall off the map for a couple weeks can be automatically dropped from their courses at MATC, and so on. So I encourage you to go through and take a look at this content. I'm just not going to use a screencast time to do that. I think I did an okay job with this. I feel like it could probably be a lot longer, and I could demo more stuff out of it, out of the syllabus and what the course expectations are. But I think I've given you enough to get going in the class, and I'll just kind of field questions and add respond throughout the semester so that you all are on track to do well in the class. If you have any questions, let me know. I hope that this was helpful. Oh, I know what I was going to do real quick too. If we go under the assignments here, the demo, the address assignment, the bulk user assignment, those are what's referred to in the syllabus, and those are also what, those are what I was talking about a second ago in the syllabus. So I'll work on that for a bit today too and get those cleaned up. Very good. This is not one of my finer screencasts. I apologize, but I do hope it was helpful, and I look forward to working with you this semester. Have a great day. Thanks.